Why should you care? I think that's an excellent question. I'm not here to tell you why you should care. Because many of you might have religious orientations that tell you why you should care. Because it's important to take care of each other, and it's important to provide charity. It's important to be able to reach out to those that have less than we do. Many of you might be globally minded and realize that these developing countries are just breweries for pandemics, and we've got a lot of major diseases coming out of the developing world. Maybe we've got some environmentalists in here, and the correlation between poverty and environmental destruction is completely connected. And deforestation and overfishing in the fisheries of the world, and overgrazing, which leads to that deforestation. The list goes on and on and on. Are the results of poor people trying to do what they can do to be able to survive. You know, cutting down the rainforest, we all hear about that, we're concerned about that. A lot of it happens by multinational corporations. A lot of it happens because poor people are trying to be able to find some place where they can grow some crops to feed themselves and their families. And it's really hard to get mad at them for doing that. And so you might have different reasons why you care about the fact that there's 3 billion poor people in this world. But I encourage you to think about it. Why do I care? I care. There's a quote that I heard, and I'm going to reiterate it. Because I feel burned between the friction of what is and what could be. It drives me crazy. It gets under my skin. If there's somebody that's suffering and they don't have to be, that I can't handle that. If there's something that I could do that I'm not doing, it keeps me up at night. If there's something that can be done to be able to improve the quality of lives of these 3 billion people I've just described, and it's possible, and it's feasible, and it makes sense, and it's practical, then that's something that agitates me. And I know there's a lot of other people who feel the same way. What can be done about this? The answer is actually quite simple. And I'm not talking about our organization right here. I'm talking about a principle. Because although the name of our organization is SHAP, and that stands for Sustainable and Comprehensive Humanitarian Assistance and Planning, SHAP is also a methodology of poverty alleviation, a paradigm, if you will. And so through sustainable and comprehensive solutions to the humanitarian issues that are affecting our global community, and by designing enlightened and strategic forms of assistance and planning, most of which are extremely low cost and high impact, if done properly, we can be able to alleviate the disadvantage that so many of the people in the world face. And sure, are we going to be able to do it all at once? No. But is there a lot that can be done to put the ball in motion to be able to create systems to overcome these things, and systems that are not required to be supported by the large players in this world, by the governments and the huge organizations, but can be driven and supported by the masses? Yeah, there are. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today. I'm going to spend the next couple minutes talking about what sustainability means in a project. Because there's a lot of organizations that do a lot of things. Because we've just transitioned in this presentation from the concepts behind it to what can be done. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of great ideas, great energies. They go and they go on a safari in Africa, they see some things, they come back, they start an organization, they raise money to create an orphanage, they do these types of things. And a lot of these things are so well-intentioned. But the projects they devise, the things they decide to implement, they don't have a lot of the key ingredients to be able to allow those to be sustainable. And you can see that's definitely the very first word in our acronym and the most important concept, because whatever we do needs to be able to have a lasting impact. So let's talk about a couple principles that at the community level allow a project to be able to be sustainable. And the first one is to be able to have community buy-in. Buy-in is a term, we use it in a lot of different ways. You guys probably know better than I do what buy-in means, because you have a lot more life experience. But basically, I define it as just an ability for somebody to be able to take ownership in their mind of something, to believe that something is theirs. And one thing that our organization is involved in, and others are, is community programs that are designed to be able to help communities overcome their sanitation problems. What many people in America and across the world don't know is that one of the most significant, if not the single most significant disadvantage in the developing world is lack of understanding of sanitation diseases and lack of infrastructure and programs and community organization to be able to control those. And so, although this is something that might be a little taboo subject, I have no problem talking about it. Community sanitation, ultimately open defecation, which happens ubiquitously in developing countries and in communities that are in developing countries, results in more morbidity, which is suffering, and mortality, which is death, than anything else. I mean, throw out hunger, throw out AIDS, throw out war conflicts. In communities that have, let's say, 300 children, for example, we see 10% mortality per year from sanitation-related diseases. That's typhoid, dysentery, cholera, and simply diarrhea that results in dehydration and ultimately death of infants and small children. All of these things are extremely preventable. We've been working on it as a society for a couple of centuries. We've got a lot of things figured out. We got this thing called indoor plumbing. It's awesome. We've got other sewage systems and other systems. We've been able to teach our children about washing their hands, about cleaning themselves. We've been able to understand that when you do dirty things, you want to wash your hands before you eat. A lot of these things have been taught to us. Yeah, they've been taught to us. I remember when I was a child in elementary school, we actually had programs about hygiene. And I was taught at a very young age. So a lot of these things that we look at communities and they see, oh, they're so dirty, how come they don't just fill in the blank? We've been taught, we've been educated that there's a correlation between unsanitary practices and ill health. And there's nothing that would directly connect an individual who's living in a developing country, that the fact that they're openly defecating and the fact that their neighbor's child passed away because of an illness that they had, there's not a clear correlation there. And so one of the things that our organization does, and we're very, very proud of doing, is we work with communities to be able to get communities to buy into this concept. There's a correlation between their sanitation practices and their ill health. And so what we do is we go in kind of almost as researchers, and we just ask a lot of questions, a lot of very provocative questions. And we ask them, where are the locations of defecation, and who uses latrines and who does it openly, and where do you do it, and why do you do it there? How many children die of this disease, and we get statistics? How many children die of this disease, and we get statistics? Why do children die of the disease? Well, we're not really quite sure. Well, have you ever thought about this? Oh, well, that's kind of a good idea. Have you guys ever seen flies that have landed on defecation? Yeah, we've all seen it. Have you ever seen flies that land on your food? Yeah, we've all seen it. What if it's the same fly? It's an important question. Have you ever seen a person defecate in the water? Yeah, we've all seen it. Have you ever drank that water? Yeah, we have. And through this series of provocative questioning, help a community to be able to make this concept clear in their mind. And that concept is, my sanitation practices are responsible for the health of my family and other people's families. And as soon as that becomes real and they've bought into that in their mind, everything else flows naturally. You come into a community and you see a situation where you've got people defecating openly. You say, all right, we write a check for $10,000, we build a couple of latrines, and we even put up a little diagram on the side of the latrine that tells people why it's important to be able to use it, and you come back 3 years later, no one's used it once. It's real, it's very common, and why don't they use it? Why should they use it? They have no reason why to use it. Why go and defecate in a dark, closed, smelly place when you can go out in the open and get a breeze while you're doing it, And so it's critical to be able to get a community to buy into the concept, or else you're going to fail as your project. Community ownership. What does community ownership mean? It's tricky. A lot of humanitarian organizations, they really get wrapped up in what community ownership is because of exactly that. It means that the community owns the thing that you're doing, and that the organization doesn't own the thing that you're doing. Because, and I'm going to say it just like this, because of my experience, when us white people, we go into Africa and think we know what's going on, we've been educated, we know what we want to do, and we want to control everything, and they're smart, but we're not that smart, so we're going to kind of tell them what to do, and we know our system's better, and all of a sudden you got a situation where the community doesn't own anything. You come in, you own it, and you wonder why the community's not doing anything about it, why the community's not using it, why the community's not utilizing it. And then, oh, you know what, they're just not that smart because they're not doing what they do. It's because they don't own it, Some of you have been employees before, some of you have been business owners. How does the employee look at the business compared to how the business owner looks at the business? Some of you have been renters, some of you have been homeowners. How does a renter look at the house versus how the homeowner looks at the house? Right? So when we're looking at the project level, how does a community feel about a project? They own it. And how do you get a community to own it? You allow them to own it. And that's a very big deal, and it's a very rare thing in international humanitarian development. We were working with a community that told us that they had low capacity for educating their children. There were public schools available, but there were several hours walk for some of the children, which several hours, like I know all of you guys walked for 2 hours uphill both ways, so you'll go to school and all that stuff, I get that. But several hours a day is a humongous investment of time, and a lot of people aren't going to make that walk, especially if they're not feeling well, or if they haven't been fed well, or if they haven't been hydrated well. It's very intimidating to be able to try and get yourself to school and back. In addition to that, many of these communities have, or many of these schools have a 70-to-1 ratio, 70-to-1, meaning they've got 70 children for every one teacher. And if you stop and think for a second, how much can one teacher really educate 70 children? And the answer is slim to none. And so it's no surprise where you've got people popping out of secondary school who are still illiterate, and that's very, very common. It's not because they're stupid, but it's because they lack the access to the tools and resources and information that most of us take for granted. Now, so this group of parents in this community said, we want to be able to educate our children, and we want to be able to do it the right way. And so, yeah, we're in the middle of rural Africa, and guess what they formed? They formed a PTA, a Parent Teachers Association. They came together and they said, we want to take control of the quality of the education that our children are receiving, because we want to educate our children to be prepared for secondary school. We want them to ultimately be able to go to university, if we're able to afford it, but at an intellectual standpoint, we want to make sure they're ready for it. And we want to be able to allow, our children to have a better access to opportunities than we have. That's how we all feel as parents, and I'm actually not a parent, but I'm assuming that's what parents feel, because that's what they've been told a whole bunch of times. So they come together as a group, and they say that they want to be able to start a PTA. They elect a man in the community who is pretty well off for those standards to be able to run this committee. And we worked as a partnership to help to build a school that they own. See, they came together and they said, okay, how do we do this? Well, we've got to be able to run it. Well, we have to pay teachers in order to be able to run it. Okay, great. Well, we want to be able to limit class size. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, we've got to get good teachers and low class sizes. Okay, well, teachers are going to be able to need to pay salaries so they can eat, right? Okay, well, where's that money going to come from? Well, if we all chip in a little bit, if we all pay a small school fee, then we can pay for the teachers who will run the school. So we stepped in and we helped to be able to do fundraising on our side to be able to raise the money to be able to build a school building. They came together and decided who's going to teach their children, how much they should be able to get paid, and where that money's going to come from. And now they pay the school fees, which ultimately pays the teachers, which allows their kids to have a quality education, which means that they are stakeholders in the school. They own the stock in the school. They pay for the school. They own the school. And you think that people steal books from our school? You think that people don't take sending their children to school seriously at our school? No, they take it very seriously, and it's because of one thing.